Insurance and Financial Services will come to order. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Skaggs.
Here.
Representatives Brixey.
Here.
Morse.
Here.
Martis.
Here.
McKinney.
Here.
Shooty. Here. Horton.
Here.
And DeVore.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, all members are present. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Clerk, and thank you, everyone, for your attendance. Representative Brixey moves to approve the minutes from April 18th without objection, so ordered. Welcome to the subcommittee, everyone. It's good to see you here in the new year. Just wanted to make sure that we followed up on the email that my office sent out earlier. We will be meeting again for the next 3 weeks, February 27th with LARA, March 5th with Indigent Defense Commission, and March 12th with the MPSC. So make sure you have those on your calendar, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone then. So today our agenda item is to hear the Governor's executive recommended budget for the Department for Insurance and Financial Services, presented by DIF's Director Anita Fox. So Director Fox, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Good morning. Thanks for having me here today. I'm joined here at the table by my Chief Deputy, Karen Geiger, who I hope is familiar and on your speed dial. I know she's on mine. I have members of my staff here, probably most of which you're familiar with, but I do have Megan Ramos, who's our new Office of Financial and Administrative Service, our Budget Director. She comes with a lot of experience, including a long tenure at the State Budget Office. So we're really glad to have her with us as well today. So I'm going to start off, and I'll zip through some of this because I know it's very familiar to you, but I always want to start with our mission because I think it's important to focus on what we do. And if you take a look at this, you'll see there are two fundamental pieces to it. Obviously, ensuring the safe and secure markets for our insurance and financial services are number one. For us, because we know how important they are to the opportunity, the economic participation of all Michiganders. But also we recognize that it's important that we don't lose sight of the need to foster economic growth and sustainability in both of these industries. One, obviously, because our residents need these vital services, but also they're really drivers of our economy. In the Lansing area, we have several major insurers. They're a big, part of our workforce, and they contribute a lot to charities and other things. So we want to make sure that our mission is always cognizant of both those things. I always start out also by just my favorite point, which is we do not generally take from the general fund. We are fee funded by the industries that we regulate. We occasionally have had general fund, mostly for very specific things that are very important to statewide priorities. This year we are not asking for any of those. And I will say at the same time, and I'm sure many of you have heard me say this before, in our day-to-day life, we don't really think about where our funds come from. We consider ourselves stewards of those money the same way as if they were taxpayer funds. They come back out of insurance premiums and the fees for our banks and our credit unions and our other lenders. So we're cognizant of it from the fact that obviously taxpayer money has other strains on it, but we take very seriously our responsibility to use that money wisely for the purposes for which it's been appropriated. Our main mission is essentially to protect consumers and assist Michiganders with consumers about their insurance and financial services. The requests included in our 2025 fiscal budget recommendation will help us strengthen our consumer protection efforts. And another very important part, raise awareness so that more Michiganders know we are here to help. So I always think it's nice also to get a little bit of historical perspective. As you probably know, the department was established as a separate department in 2013. And this shows how our budget has remained relatively stable since that time, between 65 and 75 million, with a couple exceptions, and those exceptions tend to relate to those statewide initiatives that infused extra money to do certain things like work with the autism program. This year, we're asking for 77.8 million in state-restricted funds be authorized for our use, and again, zero in the general fund. This is a $3.6 million increase in the restricted funds, and with three major purposes: increase our regulatory capacity, address the cost of a new pharmacy benefit manager licensure program created by the legislature in 2022, and specifically to conduct an outreach campaign to raise awareness of DIF's insurance complaint process, as well as Michiganders' right to appeal health insurance and other denials, and I'll get into those in more detail as we go forward. Another historical marker might be taking a look at how do we look in terms of the FTEs we've had over time. So you'll see from 2013 to 2019, we had zero growth in the number of FTEs. And when you'll see on subsequent slides that that's not reflective of the growth in the industries that we regulate and the burdens on our staff to make sure we're meeting the needs of prompt licensure, of examining on a timely basis entities to make sure that they're in compliance with state law. Over the last handful of years, we had some modest increases in FTEs in 2020, 21. They were declined in 2022, 2023, and then now we're asking again in 2024. You'll see that these reflect increased regulatory responsibilities, an increase in the number of licenses that we have, an increased number of consumer contacts in terms of helping the public. We're going to request in this budget, we do request in this budget, 7 additional FTEs to look at it, and respond to expanding work volumes and to meet the needs of consumers and industry. So we'll talk about these in a little more detail, but 4 will be in our Office of Insurance, Licensing, Investigation, and Audits. 1 is for a market regulation analyst, 1 is for an enforcement attorney, and 1 for someone in our communications area. As you know, the revenues that are produced by our licensing and regulatory responsibilities increase. The revenues increase because our licensees increase, and they also require additional FTEs to meet those needs. And if staffing were not to keep pace with the demands, we wouldn't have the regulatory oversight that you expect of us on these industries, and that consumers rely upon to make sure that those industries are safe and sound and entitled to the public confidence. We're always focused on strengthening our consumer protection efforts, and we believe that the recommendations here will help us grow our capacity and ensure more Michiganders know that we are here to help. That we can't help them if they don't. We can't connect with them. So I'm going to expand on these requests in the next few slides. So one thing I thought also was an interesting statistic for you to look at is I thought you would want to know, like, what is the cost of regulation, the cost that we impose, compared to the dollars that we bring in? And so you'll see that actually the cost for regulation per $1,000 of premium, for example, on our insurance side, has decreased since 2013 when the department first was put into its own area so that we could track our own budget. So in 2022, it's about 48 cents per $1,000 of premium, whereas in 2013, it was 56 cents. And I just give that to you for kind of your general awareness. I was interested to see that number, and it kind of confirmed that we kind of all of us are trying to do more with less across all industries, and it doesn't surprise me that in the state government, we have to try and do the same. So let's turn to the 4 FTEs requested in our Office of Insurance, Licensing, Investigations, and Audits. So one thing I thought you'd want to see here is how do the license counts look? As I'm asking for 4 more FTEs. If you look here, it's been steady growth from 2014 to 2023. You'll see an upward trajectory in every year. At the end of 2023, this period here, you see nearly 500,000 more licensees at the end of that. We saw a lot of growth during the pandemic. The trajectory of that became more steep, and we thought that might then level off, but it didn't. It's continued to grow, and this may be my watch wanted you to know what time it is. I think it's people, we all kind of saw our jobs and businesses in a different way during the pandemic. We were kind of forced to kind of fast forward on some of those. And I think people saw that maybe they wanted a career where they could have more control over whether they had a job tomorrow, how many hours they worked, how much money they made. And being an insurance producer or an agent can give you some of that flexibility and upside potential. Work less if you want to, if you have other responsibilities, work more, make more money. So we think that that's a trend that here and that's going to stay for a while, and that's reflective as I talk to my colleagues across the country. Everyone's kind of saw that coming out of the pandemic as well. So if you just for a kind of put our arms around that, it's about a more than 40% increase over the last 5 years. So this is another metric of that. This is the actual number of applications received. By time period. So each of those has to be processed. It's important to know that it's both the volume of applications have increased, and you'll see that pandemic bump, and that one did level out a bit, but still far higher than leave if you look at 2020. But the complexity of those applications has also increased, and that means more staff time. I'll give you an example. We were the last state to bar felons, just a played-out bar. If you ever had a felony conviction ever, you were not going to be an insurance agent or producer in Michigan. And the law changed. The legislature now has some parameters on that. If the felony conviction is more than 10 years old or did not include violence, criminal sexual conduct, or financial crimes, those returning citizens can be granted the opportunity to show that they have the requisite character to be an agent. But that requires looking at what the convictions were, how old they were, how were they documented, what were they for. It just takes a lot more time. So with the increased number of licenses, changes to licensure requirements, we have more work to do to make sure that licensed individuals follow the code, that consumers and businesses are protected, and that these folks who want to get into it have their licenses timely processed so that they can begin a productive career. Another program that we want to talk about, and this accounts for about $660,000 of our budget request, is in 2022, the legislature passed a new program to license pharmacy benefit managers. So we have our FTA requests and $660,000 in restricted funds to cover the administrative costs for this program. It was signed into law in 2022. PBMs are companies that work with health insurers, pharmacists, and drug manufacturers to provide patients with prescription drug benefits. They're part of that very complex prescription drug cost chain. So this is an area where the legislature decided to begin focusing on in trying to get their arms around regulating what it is that impacts consumers when it comes to prescription drugs. This came out of a recommendation of the Prescription Drug Task Force, which was, as you may recall, a group of health policy experts, bipartisan members of the legislature, and stakeholders to discuss solutions to lower the cost of prescription medications for Michigan families. This new program is designed to improve transparency and oversight of PBMs and improve consumer protections in the prescription drug market. The new licensure requirements, the law was passed in 2022, the new licensure requirements took effect on January 1, 2024, and that funding will give us the resources we need and anticipate to establish this program. So that's that first piece. The second one is one FTE in our company market regulation. This is an analyst in that section. The company market regulation monitors the marketplace of insurance companies to ensure that insurers follow state and federal law and regulations when a policy is sold or after a claim is filed. They work a number of ways. They proactively identify trends and they investigate potential issues in the insurance industry. We've worked to expand this area since I've been the director here in terms of investigations increase, but we've also seen a complexity increase. And that's partially because of the increase we see in technology, and we know what that does to consumers in so many areas, including in the cyber breaches and other areas. Many of the companies that we regulate maintain a lot of important private financial and personal information. And so if you look at this chart, This is the number, just in taking that, taking out cyber because that's its own animal. Those are the number of market regulations that were opened over the years, and then you'll see a marked increase in 2023 as we've begun, frankly, obviously in a new legislative climate, hoping that we can be more vigilant in our regulation of insurance companies and be able to increase that for the protection of Michigan consumers. So what we do some proactively is also we look at trends, but we also conduct reviews, just like an environmental agency might kind of go in an early review just to make sure there aren't other things we have to look at. We also respond to consumer complaints to make sure that is that a one-off? Is it a trend? Are we seeing other companies doing the same thing? There are many ways that we can look into that to make sure that we have a market that is fair to our consumers. Cybersecurity is the next thing, and I thought I'd separate that out just because it is such an important part and such a focus for every agency, every company, anybody who's holding any kind of information. In 2018, there was a new insurance data security law enacted, and we were charged with making sure that the companies are handling protected and sensitive information in a correct way. Different parts of the law took effect over 2019, 20, and 2021, so we've had to continue to change what we do. The law requires insurers to create and maintain an information security program, and it requires DIFs to oversee the programs of Michigan-based insurers and investigate when there are reported breaches. This section also reviews cybersecurity breaches involving our other regulated entities. We've already seen a significant growth in reports. We had 19 in 2020, and we've already had more than 130 in 2023, and that trend continues. This is a 7-fold increase. When we receive a report, we work with the companies first to review and understand the scope of the incident, to ensure proper notice to impacted individuals and businesses, and then we oversee to ensure that proper remedies are put in place to prevent future breaches as well. And as cyber criminals become more and more sophisticated, and we see an increased number of cyber attacks on insurance and financial service companies, especially in the health insurance industry, we believe that an additional FTE is well warranted to help us work to protect consumers and their personal data. The next FTE that we request is one for, it's in our Office of General Counsel, but it's in the section that does enforcement. This request, coupled with the market conduct one we just talked about, will assist us to work to significantly increase our administrative enforcement referrals brought against insurance companies and other regulated entities. When an investigation uncovers a failure to abide by state law or the guidelines in DIF's bulletins, in cases that warrant it, our enforcement attorneys work to pursue formal enforcement action against an insurance company or other regulated entities. There are often many due process requirements and administrative hearings that go on with that through the Michigan Office of Administrative Hearings and Rules. So in this chart here, I wanted to show you the number of enforcement cases open in each year. Since 2018, that's increased more than 20%. We hoped with this program to bring companies first into compliance, to make sure consumers and businesses are made whole. And then we're also able to levy fines and other penalties to deter future bad conduct. On an average, we levy about $750,000 in fines through this program every year. We want to add an additional attorney to our enforcement section to expand our capacity to help our regulated entities be accountable when improprieties are alleged. The next piece, I think, is a really important piece. One FTE in our Office of Communications. We have an important role to educate the public about insurance and financial services. I'm sure all of you have heard this from your constituents. People have a visceral reaction that insurance and financial services are very complicated, difficult to understand, expensive. It's an area where having more information and being more educated means that you can be a better consumer for these services, which are so important. These industries are ever changing. That's another issue that consumers have to deal with. There are new products. There's new scams out there all the time, and many other things that consumers need to be aware of. And we know that the first problem we have is not everybody wakes up in the morning and says, maybe the Department of Insurance and Financial Services can help us here. And so even getting an awareness out that we exist and who we are, that we have a live call center, that we have people who will help you, that we have a facilitative process. You don't have to file a lawsuit. You can call us and say, I'm having trouble settling my complaint. Can you help me? And so we know that the importance of our outreach efforts can't be overstated. And we know we've made great strides. I can tell it just anecdotally myself from people that I come in contact with before, I'm telling you, my first few cabinet meetings, people would say, what is the name of your department again? What is it you guys do? I mean, really, honestly, people just never even heard of us. The idea that we have a program where you can appeal, what do you do if your health insurer gives you a final appeal, a final denial, that there's a free program. And I'll talk about that a little more in a second, but this is something that the whole country is looking at, and we want to be a leader here in Michigan on making sure we make that public aware of that. So if you just start with how many call center calls we receive, these calls can range from a whole range of things. They can just be like, where do I find information about this? How do I get a hold of the unemployment insurance agency? We get a lot of those. They saw insurance in our name. Their phones were ringing off the hook. They could get us, and we will guide them through. We'll try and patch them in. Who's my legislator for my area that I might be able to ask a question from? Or we get, I don't understand why my bill went up. I don't understand what the difference between an adjusted rate and a fixed rate mortgage is. Many questions like that. Or we get complaints. I need your help. I've tried, I've called, I don't know what to do. I'm not getting help. So the first thing we look at is how many people call us. And you can see that in 2018, we had about 82,000, and last year we had about 140,000 calls. We have a live call center Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, toll-free number. I've told my staff from the day I got here, we're going to be a weird department. I'm going to judge you by the increase in the number of complaints. The more people complain, the happier I'll be, because they know that we're here. And you can see that 70% increase in calls to our call center. But we know that's just a fraction of Michiganders. There are a lot more people out there with questions and concerns that don't even know we're there. So we want to add a consumer representative so that they can help with those calls as well. The next slide goes hand in glove with that, and that's we want to allocate $250,000 from our restricted budget for a campaign, so we can do. We've already tried kind of everything we can do. I've done every free media that you can imagine. In the beginning, when they would say to me, like, can you do an interview with the Detroit Free Press? I'd say, like, okay, how about next Wednesday? Because I would be like, I'm going to have to prepare, I'm going to have to do all this. Now they're calling and saying, like, what are you doing at 2:30? Because this is the only way I can reach the public in a lot of ways, because my lists are not of consumers. They're insurance agents, licensed database. To get to the public, I need to work through your constituent services. So I hope you've noticed that we provide toolkits and other things, things that you can dump into your newsletter and do things. We do those so that we can reach out. But we know we need to do more. And so this request is to allow us to do a campaign principally on that health insurance denial, but on all kinds of consumer issues. We know that less than 3% of insurance claims, health insurance claims nationwide, are appealed, and it's because people just, either they burn out, they think it's not going to matter, I'm going to lose, or I don't know how, or it's going to be complicated, and you got to get this stuff together. So we want to make sure that people know we have this free service. And in an emergency situation, you can get an answer in 24 hours. Like, I need my surgery, and it's not going to go. Nationwide, again, it's less than 2%. And I'm really focused on making sure that we do better in this area now. And so we want to use all the tools that we can. We'll take and make the best use of that $250,000 to put together an ad campaign to make sure that we do a good job on that. And just to follow up on that health insurance appeal orders, you'll see that. And what I'm talking about is our Michigan Patients' Right to Independent Review, or PRIRA. We have seen a 25% increase since 2018, but it's still 551. We got a big state, we can do better. This could include instances where health plan denies coverage for medications or services. And how we do it is we don't make those medical determinations. We contract with independent review organizations. There will be a panel of providers in the same specialties who will say, like, no, you need to do this, or this patient should have that. And so, but we know that there's a lot of cases where people aren't appealing and because they just don't know their rights. Another thing I thought you might want to see as you consider this request is complaints. And I often get asked this question, like, how do you have so many calls and markedly less complaints? And so I think it's definitional, and so I think it's important for you to understand that. We get a lot of calls where people want information, or they're upset about something, but they want to try and handle it themselves. And we encourage them first, talk to your company, do your thing. Or they just want information, like, I got something in the mail that looks like I have to file this or I won't get Medicare. No, that's not true. You get a lot of those. We help people with scams. Don't do that. Don't click on that. But some people say, yeah, we have to get their permission. Do you want me to contact your insurance company? May I act on your behalf? May I contact your bank? And they have to give us permission to do that before we can intercede. And that number reflects, those people say, it's come to a point, I don't just have a question, I don't have a problem, I have something that I need your help. And that's what those are. And those are very important because they allow people to have someone to work on their behalf without having to hire a lawyer and pay lawyers' fees, without having to wait. Sometimes we can get things done so much faster. It's kind of the difference between when you have a case, if you can settle, sometimes you can get the relief you want a lot quicker and cheaper. And it's kind of the same thing that we try to provide for consumers. So the campaign that we're talking about in these last few requests would include paid advertising, earned media outreach, continuing to develop toolkits for your offices and other stakeholders. We are going to look at digital billboards, TV, radio, and social media advertising tactics, to work with our Office of Communications, develop much of the creative work internally to keep the costs down, but then where we can't, we will farm those out and buy those services that we need. We probably will need a marketing agency to support TV and radio production and place those ads. So we believe that with $250,000, we can do a lot of work inside, use that money well to reach more Michiganders, to make them know that we are here and that we can help them. So that's kind of a speed racer overview of our programs. We are an agency that's excited about what we do. I meet with all the new employees because we want to pass the message that it's not just good to work in state government, it's good to work for DIFs because of what we do. What we do is so impactful to the lives of Michiganders, and that it's great to be able to come to work and know that what you're doing matters, and that every day we see in all of our areas a way that we've helped people really participate in our economy in a way that they may not have been able to do before. So with that, you have our contact information. These are the folks just by title, so that you have. I hope that they're very familiar to you as well. Joseph Sullivan does our insurance, oversees all of our legislative program. Used to be that. Ross Yednek does our financial services, including our Michigan Open Account Coalition, which I hope I've harangued on you enough about how we're trying to help people, the unbanked, get banked. Parker Fisher, who's our insurance legislative liaison, and Karen Geiger, who I mentioned before, who oversees pretty much all of our things. The other duties is assigned person, so if you really can't find someone, that's who you need. And obviously Megan and Karen Sage from our financial side. So with that, I am very happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Director Fox. Members, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Fox, for the presentation. I'm glad to see that the department is interested in consumer protection. I think that's a really important kind of fundamental basic role that we do here and the role of government. So on that theme, I have received a lot of consumer complaints from folks that were injured in catastrophic auto accidents. These people continue to share with me some very desperate family situations that have arisen because of the auto no-fault reforms being applied retroactively to their families. So I'm wondering if the department has any plans to notify insurers of changes that have, that are kind of being dictated by the Supreme Court decision in terms of family benefits for family caregivers.
Absolutely. We issued a bulletin right away after the opinion saying these are the things that you must abide by. We sent it to insurers. We have followed up. We take, as you know, we take not just consumer complaints, but we opened up, which is a little outside of regulatory, where you can go in and, where caregivers and providers could come to us and say they were having slow billing, and we issued bulletins on that as well. We have made, we also decided that it made sense to put those up on our website. We have a weekly sheet that goes up showing how many complaints, and again, complaints defined of people who want our help. They say, I'm losing care, I'm not being paid appropriately or whatever, and then how many are resolved, and by resolved, we mean the insurer has agreed to pay for all appropriate medical care. It may not be exactly what the person said, this is X, Y, and Z what I want, but the law is being complied with, and the patient's needs are being met.
It's providers.
Yep, I know that one. And that we have had, from 21 to 24, we had about 817 of those calls and emails, formal complaints about 131. We have one open complaint and 130 have been resolved. If you know of additional, I want to tell you how we find these people too. If I see your name in a newspaper ad, we're going to contract down the reporter and say, can you contact him and have him call me? I got a call from one of you, say, can we get contact information? Can we talk to them? If they call our office, if they call the governor's office, everywhere we can find a family that needed help, we were looking for them because, again, the only way I would know if someone's having trouble with their care or if an insurer's not complying is if they come and tell me on those things. We do our normal audits, right? We look to make sure that they're doing what they can, but on a family care basis or for a particular patient, I need to know from the consumer, are you having trouble and do you want my help? On the provider side, we do the same thing. We put up a sheet. We had about, this was from 21 because that started later to 24, we got about 301 provider complaints. We have 10 open. We've closed 291 with a recovery of $12.7 million to providers by working with the insurers where those complaints were. We are looking to make sure that we look at each one and we say, okay, is this just a dispute about the code or the bill? Is it something that we can work out? Or are we seeing a pattern with a particular insurer or a group of insurers? We can refer those to enforcement. We will. So we have other tools to do those as well.
So does that mean that family members who are providing the care for their catastrophically injured loved ones are being reimbursed by their insurance companies at the rates that they were receiving prior to the 2019 reforms?
They should be reimbursed in compliance with the law as interpreted by the Supreme Court. If you're just talking about their exact, that's not in the Andari case. What came up in Andari was that they couldn't say that after 56 hours you had the insurance company had a right to say you have to have outside care.
That's what I'm referring to.
Oh, if they're not so how, let me back up. You're talking about the 56 hours?
Yes.
Okay. So prior to the time the law, from before 2019, a family member could contract for whatever, if the doctor says you need 24-hour care, the family could contract with them. After the law passed, you need 24-hour care, you still are entitled to it. And that was one of the confusing things I think consumers didn't understand, and maybe some insurance companies didn't understand. The amount of care a person is entitled to did not change. What your doctors and providers, and through whatever utilization, if there is, say you get, you get. At 56 hours a week before the Andari ruling, the insurance company could say, we want to talk to you about whether that will be outside care or whether you can continue with family attendant care. And in most instances, probably because it costs less, insurers, we're saying that a family member could continue, or family members could continue in excess of 56 hours. After Andari, the insurers do not have the right to say at 56 hours, you're done, you have to come with something else. If you are aware of families where they're still having that imposed upon them after 56 hours, those are the kind of things that we need to be made aware of, and we'll look at. I hesitate to be too broad brushed because these are so individualized, the care and what these families need and what doctors have said they need and what kind of care they're putting together and for whom. But if there's an issue where they don't feel that they're getting the care they need, whether it's because they're not getting what the doctor ordered, where restrictions are being put in that they don't feel are in compliance, that's the kind of complaints that we work with the insurance companies on. And if we find that the insurance company is wrong, we will have them make amends, and in cases we will refer them to enforcement. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Representative Morse.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm glad to hear you talk about the complaint system and the phone line that you have. I actually had someone ask me about an insurance-related issue this weekend, and I said, well, we got to get you in touch with DIFS. So that will be headed your way sometime soon. What I'm asking about, though, is as chair of the Subcommittee for Health and Human Services, we had testimony last fall on the redetermination process. I believe I saw a news release about the fact that the number of policies that have been obtained through the exchange is at the highest it's ever been. But could you please sort of talk about the impact of the redeterminations and what you've seen through insurance? Thank you.
Obviously, again, a nationwide issue, the largest kind of disruption of potential coverage for the most amount of people. When we knew it was coming. We worked with DHHS, with the governor's office, with all of you to figure out ways that we could proactively, the first thing families had to do was make sure your contact information is up to date. The first thing was to make sure that they got that review. But we also knew that there would be people who were going to need replacement coverage. So we have worked with DHHS to make sure that there's no wrong door. So what we did is we tried to let people know about open enrollment through whatever channels we could so that they would know that they can get on a system that's not, again, too complicated or too expensive. The campaign focused on two things. One, that there are subsidies available, and most Michiganders who applied found coverage for $10 or less a month, and that it walks you through, and that there are facilitators that are free and local in your community to help you get on. And we hope that those numbers are a reflection of those efforts. There are, in every state, they're worrying about people who are going to fall between the cracks. That they didn't get the things, they didn't reapply, but they are Medicaid eligible, but they didn't get on Medicaid, that they didn't sign up in time for the Affordable Care Act, or they didn't understand. But those numbers give me some encouragement that people are finding replacement coverage. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think those numbers are encouraging.
Representative McKinney.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director Fox, for being here. I just want to, similar line of questioning that Rep. Brixey was talking about around auto insurance. And I'm not sure if you saw that article that came out in Metro Times recently. I think it was February 5th. I have it pulled up, and it says Detroit still has highest auto insurance rates in the nation, despite historic legislation that happened back in 2019 with the auto no-fault reform. And it also says between 2023 and 24, the average rates in Detroit jumped by 85%. This is something near and dear to my heart because I actually live in Detroit, and I represent communities that live, near Detroit and Macomb County. And I've been getting inundated with calls recently because people are, renewing their insurance for the year, and everybody insurance rates went up. That's what I'm hearing. But more importantly, and really what I'm trying to hit at is, why is it going up so bad? Like, I've heard folks who told me, people have doubled or tripled the amount they pay per month. Mine's almost doubled for my family. I'm wondering, can you shed some light on why auto insurance rates are going up despite the legislation that was passed?
Absolutely. So let me say, first of all, let's talk about the legislation. The legislation was to lower rates for 8 years for PIP, what we call PIP, which is the medical coverage for you, because we have no fault. You're responsible for your own medical costs if you are injured in an accident. There are a lot of other coverages under your policy too, right? There's collision, there's the liability portion of your policy, there's comp, like if you hit a deer or if something falls on your car. So we're talking about two things of insurance. So let's start with the PIP. The legislature required on PIP that, like, if you choose unlimited, you get at least this much of a discount. You go all the way down. At every level, from the beginning and to this day, the insurers have exceeded the minimum, level set by it. So if it's 10%, it's 10% or more of a reduction. At every level of coverage, we see that still. I'm with you. My rates go up too. So what's leading to that? A few things, and this is a nationwide trend as well. And then I'll get to the part where we can go from there. So if you think about it, the cost of repairing a vehicle, with the supply chain things, with the electronics that we have in cars, with the cost of labor, all those things that went up during the pandemic and since then, those affect every industry. Higher interest rates, those companies paying higher interest rates are passing those on, and they pass off into how much it costs to repair a car. The cost of used cars, we know what happened to that. So the replacement costs if your vehicle's totaled. So many things have gone into that. That's one thing. Second thing, we know auto insurance rates are extremely individualized. And so if you got a ticket, if you had an accident, if your car was stolen or broken into, all those kinds of claims things go into your individual rates. And strangely enough, across the country and in Michigan, and you may have seen these reports from the Michigan State Police, the number and severity of accidents and tied to the speed at which drivers were driving increased during the pandemic. I don't know if when people got back on the road, they were excited to be there, or they were used to driving with no other cars in the way. But across the nation and reflected here in Michigan, we've seen that. And that, the way auto rates by statute are, you take the costs, the claim costs, the administrative costs, whatever, and they have to be, they can be passed back on in premiums. We also don't have a statewide rate. No state does, where you could say, like, you could, I suppose, blend everyone together, the UP, everyone, and then kind of with an average. No state does that, and you can imagine, you remember those discussions about the roads, should it be the amount of miles or the amount of cars driven on the road when you tax? Well, it's kind of the same thing. We could blend a rate and probably go down in Detroit, but it'd go up a lot in the UP, and you'd have those kinds of things. So what we have it now is they look at the costs. What kind of car do you drive? How likely is it to be stolen? What are the claim costs in your area? What does it cost to repair a car in your area? And unfortunately, across the country, that impacts urban areas harder. The cars are driving in more compact areas. There's more accidents, those kinds of things. So I would tell you, the first thing I would tell anyone who called me and told me their insurance rates went up 3 times, I'd say shop around. We have a robust auto insurance market. We have 100 companies or so, somewhere give or take, depending on it, and ask for discounts. I'm a member of an alumni association. My kids get A's and B's in school. There's like all kinds of things. Make sure they're giving you whatever it is. I bundle my home and auto. Those can be significant, but shop around. Insurance companies even used to try and charge people more if you were the kind of person who didn't shop. But they could target you, like, you're not going to shop. I'm going to give him 20% more because I know he's going to stick with me. He's been with me for 20 years. He's never looked elsewhere. We stopped letting them do that. We said, that's not a factor that affects your costs. Those kinds of things. The other thing is, I've been talking with auto insurers. Are there things they can do about that? Are they making sure that the people who are supplying their auto parts aren't just taking advantage of the fact that they can go, well, everybody's just going to blame inflation. Everybody's just going to blame the supply chain. Are they doing everything they can to get the best deal? Are they looking at the costs that have increased, or they just go, well, I'll just pass that on to my insurance company, and then my insurance company will pass it on to their consumers? So I think there are things we have to look at. The law changed also. You remember, now that you can buy different levels of coverage, we have to look at over the time, how does that look in terms of how many people have medical costs that exceed the cost of their limits? So are they suing? And is that increasing costs? We'll have to look at that. We also always have to remember we are the only state in the nation that ever had unlimited lifetime benefits. So whenever they compare us to other states, we still offer it. You don't have to have it. You used to have to buy it. But our costs for that, if you average out over the state, are always going to be higher. We have the best benefits in the country still, to this day. No matter what coverage level you pick, you have the highest benefits in the country. And if you pick unlimited, you're alone in that. And it is a wonderful benefit. It's amazing. If you could buy unlimited lifetime benefits and all years coverage, you would buy it if you could afford it. And that was the big rub for us. So I'm very sympathetic to that and how it impacts urban areas, how it impacts consumers. But it's a complicated question, and we're all suffering together on that. And we're going to do everything we can. I hired actuaries for the first time this department has ever had them to look at the filings. Before, when I got here, they go like, don't worry, actuaries look at them. And then I found out it was the company's actuaries. Then all they have, and even though it says actuarial science, it's not a science like 2 + 2 is 4. It's a reasonableness thing, right? They can put together, can I reasonably justify these rates? So I have outside actuaries who help me push back. That might be reasonable. Is there another reasonable way to look at it? Is there something you're leaving out? And we're still seeing the increases, even with using outside actuaries on every single auto filing. So we'll continue to look at it, but I cannot promise you that across the board. I think Michigan, like other states, is seeing increases, and it's a lot.
If I may, just want to appreciate your candor and your explanation, because the narrative out there, right? Like right. You guys just hiring actuaries like that, the public needs to know that, because they're coming to us screaming at us, pleading for help. And so whatever we can do to support you guys and help buffer that. And but I do have a follow-up question real quick, and I'll pass the mic. One of the things
you want to hear me talk all day. That's fine. Go ahead.
One of the things that's really going on, that I don't think the auto no-fault reform addressed was redlining. And if you look at the data that's going on and the data that I'm getting, I'm talking to insurance companies. They're telling me, well, it's collision and these are the nature that increasing the rates. But I can't help to think that redlining is still taking place. Is the department doing something to try to, curtail some of that and really hold these insurance companies accountable? And can you shed some light of what's really going on, if you know anything, if that practice is still happening or not?
So redlining, as the term's defined, means that I won't write in this area. I won't sell, there's this kind of family living in those houses and we don't insure them, or I'm not going to insure their car. We don't allow any company who writes in Michigan to refuse to write any area. That's the starter. That's the easy answer. The harder answer is the law allows for territorial rating. And there have been different aspects of trying this over the years, like trying to say like it can't change from this much from this territory to that territory, which weren't very successful. But again, like I was saying at the beginning, is if you had one big territory, it wouldn't be an issue. But we allow, and every state allows, territories. So there's going to be a line on that territory, and there are always going to be those stories like, if I live on this side of that street, I'm paying this, and if I live, no matter where you draw the line, there's going to be a line, and that's something that I think everybody struggles with, and struggles with whether it is whether it creates equity issues, and whether it hides other kinds of bias, and yet the law allows for territorial rating, so we can review it, and we can review the territories. And I can stop redlining. I can say, you cannot refuse. I can't tell them they have to market the same in every area. They are private companies, and so it's a tough issue, but I can assure you that we would not allow redlining per se.
Thank you.
Representative Schutte.
Thank you, Chairman Skaggs, and thank you, Director Fox, for coming and testifying. I've had multiple constituents. We've connected with your department and been very happy for the services that you've provided, and thank you for your testimony here today. Want to ask a question regarding your outreach campaign. How are you going to plan to analyze the efficacy of your outreach campaign? What does the success of this $250,000 campaign look like to you?
So obviously, one of the things we're going to go, do we get increased contacts? More people contacting our office for help, right? On the number of health appeals. Are we beating the percentages nationwide? Are we beating the percentages we had before of people who take advantage? Whether they win or lose, do they know they have another avenue of appeal? Those are kind of our basic metrics that we think are going to be really important.
Do you think then if your outreach campaign is successful, you would have the capacity within your organization to handle it within the new FTEs that you've requested, or would you anticipate an additional FTEs if this campaign is
If it
successful?
blows up, we would love nothing more than coming back to you and saying, we need more people because more people need help. So I hope so. I hope we're back.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. Anyone else? Just two quick questions, Director Fox.
Sure.
You mentioned, and we talked about this last year, a little bit about efforts to get the unbanked banked. Can you talk about what has happened in the past
Sure.
and plans
Sure.
to move forward?
So we know that being unbanked is a problem. I mean, imagine this society. Imagine during the pandemic when no one wanted your cash. I've never kept cash in my wallet for so long, ever. The kids would take it, we'd go in. All of a sudden, I'm in it, and I'm like, where did I get all this? Because there wasn't. Imagine if you didn't have a way to do that. What would you do? Well, you resort to things, cash apps and other things. And we know that people who are unbanked paid an average of $3,000 a year in those kinds of fees if they don't have a banking system. And that's $3,000 for families who can least afford it. We also know that those kinds of methods are less secure. We know that the loans that they get are at higher rates. So one of the things we thought about, well, first of all, we did what you would imagine. We looked at why aren't people banked? And then obviously there's a lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons we saw is people felt that the fees were not transparent, and you could get stuck with something that, you got your $57 in there, you know how you're going to do it, you know the water bill's $40, you got $17 left, you're going to make it to the paycheck, and boom, you get a $20 overdraft fee. And now what do you do? Because on top of it, you get that fee, then the other thing, and then the person who you wrote the thing to gets it, a mess. So people say, I just can't do it. So what we worked with our banks and credit unions and other stakeholders to create what's called the Michigan Open Account Coalition, and it's kind of it's in partnership and patterned of these Bank On initiatives nationwide. And there's Bank On Lansing, Bank On Detroit, and Ross is heading up that program for us. And the idea is that banks and credit unions can apply to have these certified accounts, so that when I get one of these accounts, I know the ATM fee can't be more than this many dollars. The minimum monthly balance fee can't be more than this. That there are no overdraft fees, those kinds of things, so that I can start my banking relationship with the comfort that my money's not that I'll understand my money. And then from there, you hope we create a relationship. And when you need a loan, And when you need other things, you are now in a conventional banking system and not in some of those cash apps, payday lenders, and other things where we know are very expensive for consumers. So we've spent the first year really working on getting institutions signed up and making sure that we have coverage in every county. And we're continuing to work on that. And then we're also working with our stakeholders to make sure that people know and open those accounts. And then selling it to our banks and credit unions. Look, these aren't people who are going to switch out and go, woo, I'm going to switch into a no-fee account from the account I already have. I think in excess of 85% were new accounts. They're making multiple transactions a month. They're sticking with it. And I tell banks and credit unions, your potential market is changing. They're different people. Your communities are changing. How are you going to bring them into your banking system? How are you going to create new customer base? This is a great way to connect with a whole new group of people. So we've been very happy about the success. We're not done. As of February 13th, there were 32 financial institutions, 36 different accounts, and 67 counties. There are also 5 financial institutions with certified accounts available to Michigan consumers that have ATM locations in the state without physical branches. So we're really trying to branch out in every way we can.
Wonderful. And then last question, we'll see if we can beat the 1 hour goal here.
Sorry.
I was listening to the senator from Massachusetts last night, and she was talking about federal legislation that she has on regulation of cryptocurrency. So I wonder if this is something that has been discussed in the department, if other states are doing this, but there's obvious issues about consumer protection, about safety, about the fact that a lot of times cryptocurrency is used for scams and for fraud and for other criminal activity. So wonder where Michigan fits in on that.
So it's a nationwide discussion as well, and through my counterparts, we're talking about it as well. I can tell you from the first thing is we don't allow our banks and credit unions to count that as assets because of the volatile and nature of those kinds of things. We don't consider that. We will let them participate in some of the services, but not rely on that to be able to pay people's money back because it could be gone. And we're very conservative about protecting people's money. As of this point, we don't regulate that. We haven't really had a push on the need side where banks and credit unions and consumers are asking for that. It's an open question in Michigan still. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Ross?
I think you nailed it. It's, we're exploring with the other.
And we work with the Conference of State Bank Supervisors on this issue and with our regular federal counterparts as well. And I think everyone is struggling. Is this here to stay? What does it do? Is there a legitimate need for it? I mean, everybody knows that there's going to be electronic sort of things, and we're moving towards electronic things, but crypto's a whole other thing, this whole secret nature of it. And I know some of your predecessors have thought that was the best part about it, but it also is the most dangerous part about it. And the fact that you can't trace it and that you can't recover it. And so we're treading slowly, but we're not oblivious to the fact that this is something that may be coming, and we're doing everything we can to learn about it and work with other regulators and other agencies to see what's the most appropriate approach for Michigan.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'd like to continue that discussion as we move forward. So I just want to thank you again, Director Fox, for coming in and talking to us. Thank you, members, for your excellent questions. Much appreciated. We will see you next week. And with that, seeing no further business, this subcommittee is adjourned.